It was a routine night flight, cruising at 36,000 feet, carrying 112 passengers across the ocean and into the mountains beyond. The weather report showed mild turbulence, nothing more. The captain joked with air traffic control. The co-pilot sipped coffee. Passengers slept, watched movies, or stared at the darkness outside their windows. Then at 02:17 a.m., the radar symbol flickered. At 02:18, it vanished. No distress call, no explosion, no debris. Search teams scoured the region for months. Satellites, helicopters, thermal sensors. They found nothing. Eventually, Flight 611 was declared lost. Families mourned without bodies. Investigators closed the case with a single phrase, cause unknown. Among the dead was Elias Rowe, age 34. Former Air Force pilot, civilian passenger. Status? Presumed dead. Tonight, 7 years later, the sky did not remember Flight 611, but the radio did. 2 F-22 Raptors sliced through the upper clouds on a midnight patrol. Their engines whisper quiet compared to older jets. Call signs Viper 1 and Viper 2. Their mission was simple. Airspace sweep, systems check, return to base before sunrise. The storm below them was violent, rolling black clouds, lightning flashing like distant artillery. Mountains rose beneath the cloud layer, sharp and unforgiving. Viper 1 adjusted altitude. Storm's ugly tonight, he muttered. Viper 2 chuckled. Mountains always are. Then the radio crackled. Not static, not interference. A voice. Mayday, Mayday, this is call sign Survivor. Both pilots froze. Viper 1's hand tightened on the control stick. Say again? The voice returned, weak but steady. Call sign Survivor. Civilian crash site. I repeat, call sign Survivor. The cockpit went silent except for engine hum. That call sign was impossible. Viper 2 pulled up archived data on his display, heart pounding. No way. There it was. Group Elias, call sign Survivor. Status KIA, 7 years ago. Dead. Listed among the missing passengers of Flight 611. Viper 1 swallowed. This has to be a ghost signal. But the voice came again, closer now. Signal strength improving. If you can hear me, you're the first in 7 years. 7 years. Viper 2's voice dropped. How does a man survive 7 years out here? Below them, the storm shifted. Lightning revealed jagged peaks coated in ice and snow, valleys untouched by sunlight for months each year. Viper 1 keyed the radio. Unknown caller, identify yourself. A pause. Then, my name is Elias Rowe, former Captain United States Air Force, passenger on Flight 611. The words were calm, controlled, military, not the voice of a madman. I survived the crash, Elias continued. I've been transmitting every night since. You're the first to answer. Viper 2 whispered, Holy hell. Command came online. Moments later, voices overlapping, disbelief filling every word. Repeat last transmission. Confirm location. Say again. 7 years. Coordinates appeared on the Raptor's screens. They pointed directly into the most dangerous section of the mountain range, an area known for avalanches, zero cell coverage, and temperatures that could kill in minutes. Viper 1 stared at the map. No way a civilian survives that long. The radio crackled again. I don't have much power, Elias said. Radio's patched from wreckage, battery failing. How many survivors? Viper 1 asked. Another pause. 1, Elias replied. Just me. Lightning flashed again, and this time the Raptor's sensors picked something up. Heat. Small, faint, human. Buried deep in a ravine. Viper 2 felt his throat tighten. He's really there. Elias continued, his voice softer now. I stayed with the others as long as I could. Treated injuries, used seat foam for insulation. When they were gone, I kept the signal alive. Viper 1 closed his eyes for a second. This wasn't just survival. It was endurance. Command issued immediate orders. Search and rescue inbound, but weather conditions were brutal. Helicopters would need time. Can you mark your position? Viper 2 asked. Negative, Elias said, but I have 1 flare left. Seconds passed. Then a bright orange flame pierced the darkness below, briefly illuminating a shattered fuselage embedded in ice. Viper 1 exhaled sharply. There. Both jets circled, guarding the airspace, watching the tiny light flicker against the vast, hostile mountains. Elias spoke one last time, before the signal weakened. "I didn't know if anyone would ever hear me," he said. "But I kept calling, because that's what pilots do." Static swallowed the channel. The flare burned out. And for the first time in 7 years, Elias Rowe was no longer alone in the dark. Snow whipped across the mountains, winds howling like something alive. The flare Elias had fired burned out quickly, swallowed by darkness and ice. Yet the F-22 Raptors kept circling, their sensors locked on the faint heat signature below. Viper 1 stayed steady. "He's still alive. Heat's weak but stable." Viper 2 glanced at the fuel gauge. "Command needs to hurry. We can't loiter forever." Command's voice came through, firm but tense. "Rescue helicopters are en route. ETA 40 minutes. Weather is the biggest threat." 40 minutes. Down in the ravine, Elias Rowe sat inside a shelter made from torn aluminum panels, insulation foam, and parts of airplane seats. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The radio in front of him was silent now. The patched battery flickered, then went dark. For 7 years, silence had been his enemy. Tonight silence returned, but it felt different. He leaned back and closed his eyes. Memories rushing in. The night of the crash, the screaming, the violent tearing of metal, the sudden stillness after impact. He remembered dragging injured passengers from the wreckage with hands bleeding and lungs burning. He remembered using safety manuals to splint broken legs, melting snow for water, rationing snacks meant for a 2-hour flight across weeks of survival. One by one, the voices faded. He buried them beneath stones, marking names with broken seat frames. When the last fire died and no rescue came, something inside him hardened. If no one was coming, he would outlast the mountain. He hunted small animals with sharpened metal, learned the weather, learned the silence, and every night he fixed the radio again and again, whispering into the void. "Mayday, call sign survivor." The distant thump of rotors cut through the storm. Elias's eyes snapped open. He staggered outside, shielding his face from the snow. Through the swirling white, a searchlight stabbed downward, sweeping the ravine. He raised his arms, barely able to stand. Above him, the rescue helicopter fought the wind, guided by the Raptor's data. Crew members leaned out, scanning. "There!" one shouted. "Movement near the wreckage." The helicopter hovered, lowering a rescue swimmer on a cable. The man hit the snow hard, stumbling as he ran toward Elias. "Sir, can you hear me?" Elias tried to answer, but his voice failed. His legs buckled. The rescuer caught him just in time. "You're safe," the man said, disbelief thick in his voice. "You're going home." Elias laughed weakly. "About damn time." They lifted him into the helicopter as dawn began to break through the storm clouds. As the aircraft climbed, Elias looked down at the wreckage, his prison, his shelter, his proof of life. 7 years, gone in seconds. At the military hospital, doctors worked through the morning. Hypothermia, severe malnutrition, old fractures that had healed wrong. But his heart was strong, his mind sharper than anyone expected. When he finally woke fully, a woman sat beside his bed, hands trembling. "Elias?" He turned his head slowly. "Mara." His sister collapsed into tears, gripping his hand like she might lose him again. "We buried you," she whispered. "We had a memorial. I never stopped hoping, but—" Elias squeezed her fingers. "I never stopped calling." Word spread fast. A man lost in a civilian plane crash. Declared dead. Survived 7 years alone in the mountains. Reporters flooded the base. Officials asked questions. Investigators reopened the Flight 611 case. When asked how he survived, Elias always gave the same answer. "Training kept me alive. Hope kept me sane." One afternoon, weeks later, Elias stood outside the hospital, wrapped in a jacket too big for his thin frame. 2 pilots approached, Viper 1 and Viper 2. They saluted instinctively. Elias smiled and returned it just as naturally. "Never thought I'd hear that call sign again," Viper 1 said. Elias looked up at the sky. "Neither did I." "You know," Viper 2 added quietly, "most people would have stopped transmitting after a few months." Elias nodded. Most people aren't pilots. He paused, then said softly, "A pilot never assumes the radio is dead. We assume someone's still listening." Months later, a memorial was held at the crash site. Helicopters carried stones engraved with names. Elias placed each one carefully, finally giving the dead what he had promised them long ago: recognition. As he stood there, wind brushing the mountains, his radio crackled. "Not an emergency, just a test signal. Call sign survivor," a voice said. "Radio check." Elias smiled. "Loud and clear," he replied. "Survivor is off the mountain and back in the world." The sky remained silent after that, but this time it felt peaceful.